Hello, thank you for joining me today on my channel. We really appreciate you stopping by. Today's video, I have a special guest. This is Sarge Viney. I did a podcast recently, and this is a short segment of that incredible podcast with Sarge Viney, who's a YouTuber. He's a living historian. He's very experienced in outdoor adventure in all the different facets. It doesn't matter if you're into hammocking, if you're into car camping, or somewhere in between. Sarge Vining has a tremendous amount of experience that he shared with us on my podcast. Now, if you're interested in watching the complete thing, you can see it at the end of this video, or you can go in the description and the link is below, including Sarge Vining's channel. So make sure to check out Sarge's channel for more information and great content from him. Now, in this particular clip, Sarge goes into a tremendous amount of detail of his experiences growing up and participating in outdoor adventure during the 60s and 70s. So it's a blast from the past. But what's beautiful is Sarge does a great job of connecting contemporary camping with historical camping. So if you like outdoor adventure, doesn't matter what it is, you'll really enjoy this episode. So grab your coffee or kick back, relax, and here we go.
And living in New Hampshire, you're surrounded by mountains and woods. Uh, when I grew up, when you went back to school, uh, and people started asking nobody asked, where did you go? What did you do on your vacation? The question always was, where did you go camping? And so it was like I was nothing special. I wasn't adventurous. I wasn't different from everybody was going camping. We lived about 5 miles from the second biggest lake in New Hampshire. And the great thing about that, it was the reservoir for 2 counties, and they had it fenced off, and the woods was out there, and there was a sign that says, you can't come in here. And the one thing you don't tell an 8-year-old boy is, look at these woods, you can't come in here. So, me and my buddies and my brother, we spent our summers out there on Lake Massabesic was the lake. So yeah, I've been camping all my life.
All right. So going a little bit back there, what is a line cabin? I've never heard that term before until now.
A line, uh, a line shack, a job site shack, and it's basically just a very small structure where the foreman keeps files and drawings and things like that. I remember even as a little 3-year-old, 4-year-old boy, that it was a fairly small space. When we first had that shack, it had just enough room for a pair of Army bunk beds and a shelf on one wall where there was a Coleman stove, and underneath that was a cooler. And for the first couple of years, that was what living out there by the lake was. Uh, Eventually, Dad added on to it, and it just got bigger, and that line shack became Ma's kitchen. But it wasn't very big. Some place to keep the tools when you're on a construction thing. So it was it was great. When I sit and I want to be at peace, I think about that time out there by the lake and hiking and camping out by Lake Massabesic. Uh, but nothing really special. I was just one of the guys. Everybody else was doing it.
That's fascinating because Dick Prinicky, or I think I pronounced that right. I'm not exactly sure, but he built his cabin just for himself, one man. And it's a pretty decent sized cabin that he built. And I'm trying to imagine basically an office space and an entire family living in there. I would think that would be dreadful.
It didn't, it wasn't small for very long. Mom and Dad slept. These were two the bunk beds were basically two twin size beds, one on top of the other. My brother and I slept in
Uh-huh.
one, and my mother and dad slept in the other. And of course, the first order of business was to build that front room out front so that we weren't all, my mother and dad got a bigger bed, and I got my own bunk, and my brother got his own bunk. So and then of course dad added on the loft and everything, and it was a constant building thing for about 7 or 8 years. And when he got it to a decent shape, he sold it and took the money that he had saved on rent and bought a nice 100-year-old farmhouse in the suburbs of Manchester, New Hampshire, just down the road from, like I said, a huge lake that nobody but 10-year-old kids could go into. So it
That's
was a
cool.
wonderful life. It really was.
So you really, like you said, you grew up in it. Um, and at no point you growing up in this, it was just, it was still an adventure for you. It wasn't just part of life. Cause I know a lot of kids, I'm a scout leader and everything. And a lot of kids that I live in a rural area and they have some property. Those kids, they don't like going in the woods, even though it's all around them. They don't really care for it. But you were living that life and it was a playground and you never grew tired of it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I talked to a friend of mine last year. He came to visit me. He still lives in New Hampshire, spends winters in Florida, and he came and stayed with me for about a week. And I told him, I said, I noticed that some a housing development had gone up outside the boundaries of the lakes, the lake's boundaries. And I said, there must be a lot of kids going out there now. There's probably a lot of paths and things. And he said, no, he says, kids just don't do that anymore. Uh, when I grew up, my mother would know, particularly in the summer times, my mother would know I was alive because food went missing from the refrigerator every couple of days. You know, and if she looked outside and looked across the yard over to the street next door, and it wasn't a street, but anyway, it was a rural area. But she could see my buddy Mike's yard, and if Mike was in the yard, in his yard, and I wasn't in mine, my mother got worried. Okay, that meant I was off doing something else. But if I was gone and Mike was
Yeah.
gone and my brother was gone, we were camping. My mother knew it, So, it's just not that way anymore. Parents, my dad, my dad encouraged this behavior. My mother, of course, was a little worried, but my dad actually encouraged it. Let them go out in the woods, let them learn. And like I said, some of my best memories. You know how sometimes you just want to go to your happy place. I
Amen.
close my eyes and I see the area around Lake Massabesic where we went camping. Uh, yeah, that's where I learned everything, and a lot of it I learned by doing myself and making mistakes, and my dad laughing at me for making the mistake. So, uh, dad dad was an Eagle Scout, so I did learn a lot from that. I was never a scout, but I devoured the Scouts manual. My dad's Scouts manual from the 30s and 40s. He was a scout in the 30s and 40s, and I devoured that manual. And of course, all of my friends and their fathers and grandfathers and uncles and all, they were all steeped in all of this camping stuff too. So like I said, it was just a normal part of life. It wasn't anything really special to go camping. It's just what everybody did. And having
Right,
said
right.
that, campsites weren't crowded like they are today. we used to go up to the White Mountains, the national forest up there, and we could just drive up anytime we wanted to and find a campsite at any one of the developed camping areas.
Oh, wow.
Today I look and I see lines 5 mile long on the side of the road, trying to get to a trailhead in the White Mountains, let alone finding a place to camp. So, yeah, things have changed drastically since I was a boy.
If you like this video so far, please click like. That way other people find it and you'll be helping them out discover all this great information. We really appreciate it. That's it's kind of odd because, if anything, my imagination would paint the opposite picture that today that camping's kind of a dying thing, and the golden age of camping, no matter or outdoor adventure, is behind us. So it's refreshing to hear that experience from you. That there's still a lot of hope. There's still a lot of people interested in getting out there, even if it is glamping or relaxed hiking or something.
Yeah, well, I think what it is, it's a function of the size of the population. As far as the general population is concerned, uh, I believe probably the same percentage of people are heading to the woods uh, as there were 100 years ago. But there's just simply more people. So
Right.
that same percent, that 5% of 2 million is a lot less than 5% of 300 million. So I think that's part of it. Of course, the other part of it is there was a huge uh, folks your age, and I'm awful dang sorry that I'm that old to have to say that phrase, but folks, you've got gray hair and you're a young man to me. Uh, uh, Dang, lost my train of thought. Uh, oh, I lost what I wanted to say.
You're saying folks my age.
Yeah, well, oh, that's where it is. Folks your age don't realize the explosion of backpacking in the late 60s and 70s. That is, as far as the change in camping, I don't think there's been much change in car camping, what we called motor camping in the 20s and 30s, and car camping today. The explosion came in backpacking, doing backcountry camping. Uh, that Have you ever seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari?
I have not. It was on my list, but I have not yet. No.
You should watch it. There's a great line in there where Lee Iacocca is trying to convince the board of directors of Ford Motor Company to let him make the Mustang.
Uh-huh.
And in it, he says, "We are trying to make a car that we can sell to the first generation of teenagers that have money in their pocket." And that's what happened with backpacking. Uh, Suddenly, teenagers had money. Uh, you look back at my father and my grandfather, they went through years of financial difficulty. Unless you were really, really, really rich, you were having financial difficulty. And with the
Right.
depression and the panic of the 90s and just a bunch of stuff. And suddenly, after World War II, everybody has a job, everybody's making money, everybody's putting money in the bank. You can start giving your kids an allowance, and like I said, suddenly teenagers had money and they were able to save for a car or buy a Kelty pack and a dome tent. Go through when I in about 6 7 months, I'm going to be going through the 60s and 70s on my channel and do this a little better than what I'm doing right now. But uh,
You do fine, Sarge. You do a great job there.
I'm just saying that is what's driving people to the woods today is is uh, is backpacking. Uh, and I think that's why it was so easy for us back in the 50s and the 60s to find a campsite where you can't find one today. You can't find parking at a trailhead or anything like that, simply because people weren't doing the backcountry stuff as much as they are today. There's a higher percentage of backpackers and backcountry folks out there in the woods today than there would have been when I was young. Did that make any sense at all? Because I'm not sure it did. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, no, that's one of the reasons why when I study the 20s and 30s uh, camping, I tend to lean more towards the trekking, what we call backpacking today. I lean more towards the trekking aspect of it, and where most everybody is focusing on the motor camping aspect of it. Uh, as far as classic camping goes, if you look at the way that Dave Westcott and Steve Watts
Hmm.
started out the classic camping thing with the Acorn Patrol, their focus was on the camping was suddenly more comfortable than it was before, uh, and it's
Yeah.
but that's the thing that's something that is attractive to old guys like me, reenactors, living historians, uh, to do stuff because we get to sit around and tell lies to our buddies about how good we were when we were young, and then sit back and eat some steak or something like that cooked on the campfire. But what that ignores is the fact that this was a time when the long distance trails in this country were starting. The long trail started. I don't have my reference material here in front of me, but I know that it started. It was the first long distance trail, and I know it started before the First World War. Uh, most of the national parks were building trail systems uh, within the park. Uh, the if you look at the cover picture for Bannerman's camp, is a group of
Hmm.
hikers from the Smoky Mountains Hiking Society. They were at the time blazing trails through the Smoky Mountains and lobbying to have it made a national forest or national park. Uh, all of this was going on. So this is the birth. It's kind of the birth of trekking, the birth of recreational backcountry camping, as opposed to recreational motor camping. The 20s and the 30s is where it all started. By the 1930s, motor camping was pretty much established. It was a new thing
Hmm.
when Henry Ford first made a Model Ts cheap and available. But 20 years later, the market was established. The tools that were needed. The Coleman stove had been. If you watch my History of Gear series, uh, you'll notice that for the first 20, 30 years, I don't focus all that much on stoves and backpacks and tents because most of that stuff had already been established and were in use by 1920 and had been maybe 10
Right.
years. By the time we get to 1930, it's pretty much old hat. Everybody, like I said, the way I grew up, everybody's doing it. But
Right.
once people got close to the woods, then they started going into the woods. And that's where backpacking started. That's it's kind of like uh, westward expansion begat recreational car camping, which begat backpacking. So uh, but that's why I focus on what I do with Bannerman's camp and the YouTube channel is I am really trying to trace the history of backpacking, along with the history of camping in general. Uh, and I'm just having one hell of a time doing it. I really am. It's you've crawled up inside of a wood sleeping robe next to a campfire inside of a canvas tent. You know how that feels, how much fun that is. Uh, the problem is it's difficult. It's hard enough to convince people to go camping 100 years ago. Now you got to convince them. Okay, now that we're going camping 100 years ago, let's go backpacking 100 years ago. And we're at a time when lightweight backpacking just didn't happen. Yeah, the only way you went lightweight backpacking in the 20s and 30s was you left a bunch of stuff home, and
Right.
and, and you know, uh, although the history of backpacking, the history of camping is a constant tension between uh, weight and bulk, and making a bunch of mental calculations as to what do I want to carry the sleeping bag that will keep me warm down at 20 degrees, but it weighs 10 pounds, or can I get away with a wool blanket that will keep me down and keep me warm down to 40 degrees, and it might not get it that there's a whole lot of calculus that has to go on there, where today uh, you pretty much can choose whatever you want uh, as general. I'm a hammock camper when I go modern camping,
Hmm.
uh, and I have the equipment I use because I live in Texas, so I have a bit of advantage in that I don't have freezing cold uh, winters. But pretty much the same equipment I take in the winter is stuff I take in the summer. Uh, Although I can leave an underquilt home, but
I hope you like this video and what Sarge shared with us, and you learned something from it. You got excited about it. I know I enjoyed the opportunity of speaking to him. Now, we have a lot of podcasts lined up in the future, so you don't want to miss. So make sure to subscribe. That way you don't miss it. And you can, again, check out the podcast, Campfire Chats with Honorable Outfitters, on all the podcast channels that's out there. So make sure to download and subscribe to that. You can check out all my other links below. Don't forget to check out Sarge's channel. If you want to see more of Sarge's podcast interview, then check out this video here. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Give a kiss and hug to your loved ones, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.